welcome to the Voices of Faith and Leadership, the Gillette version.
Thank you, Gillette, for hosting.
Yes, hosted at First United Methodist and their pastor Corey Young. Tonight's presenter is Amy Albrecht, and I'm going to let her introduce herself because she knows more than I do. But she works for the Center for a Vital Community out of Sheridan. It's part of Sheridan College. They do lots of different things within the community, working to make it better in so many different ways. One of those things is the study circle process, and I've asked her to help us go through a workshop type setup for that, even though the process itself takes several months. I'm going to let you tell some of the other things you've done, some of the other things the center does, and then take us through that study circle process.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you very much, Mary. Hi, everybody. Hi. So I'll just tell you briefly about the Center for a Vital Community. We have been in existence since 2001. The Homer and Mildred Scott Foundation, which is a family foundation in Sheridan, had this vision of a nonprofit that would be able to work with people to get them engaged in the community. So they fund a lot of somewhat like family and child oriented things, but they really wanted a center that would be able to work on community issues. And so they put up the money, matching money for the Center for a Vital Community, and they didn't want to run it and they didn't want to own it. And so they found the Sheridan College to be a partner. And so Sheridan College said that they would make it a program of college. So I am fantastic.
I'm going to troubleshoot some stuff here.
It's this fantastic amalgamation of a standalone nonprofit. So I raise all of the money for our organization, and I'm a college employee. So I get all the state benefits, but I don't have to worry about the budget and the legislature for the college, because since I'm fundraising for our programs, for mine and my project coordinators' salaries, then as long as I can get that done, and then we get to just do our own thing. It's fantastic. And so we really are the community outreach program for the college. And so we have three focuses. One of them is nonprofit support. So Sheridan has a really, this is redundant, rich philanthropic, not just reputation. It's just, there's a lot of philanthropy in Sheridan. There's a lot of money in Sheridan. And so there are a lot of nonprofits that are just doing incredible work. And a lot of them are very, very small. And so they don't have the opportunity to go out and get training, go to national conferences or, and so we, the CDC, bring in trainers. We do a lot of networking opportunities for them. We work with generally anywhere between 35 and 45 nonprofits. There's a lot more in Sheridan, but those are the ones that are really active and that we do a lot with. So our nonprofits play really well together. They talk to each other, they share all the time, they love to hang out together. And I really think that's the CDC that was before me. I can't take any credit for that, but we also do board training. So the Interfaith board has been part of that. So I do it by Zoom. It's every other month for 90 minutes. And it's the foundational things that you need to know to be a nonprofit board member. So just the things that are just super. Go ahead. Could we join? Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. You can just, I will hand out cards and you can go to the website and so it's been really interesting because we so desperately need people to be on boards, but we also need people to be on boards and to know what that means and what those expectations are and what the responsibilities are. And so it's fun. I love having people. I love to have board members show up. I have a lot of executive directors that show up, who then figure out that their board is not it's not functioning. Yeah, and should be functioning better. Things like that. But that's one of the things that we do. Again, we do this thing called spring training. We do this about every 3 years or so when we have a critical mass of new executive directors or key staff. These are the building blocks of a successful nonprofit. We bring in speakers and they have homework pre and post and stuff. And it's a full day and it's 6 months. And anyway, so so we do, that's our nonprofit piece. And then the second thing that we do is leadership training. So we have both our 8th grade leadership program is a graduating 8th graders from Sheridan and Johnson County, so Buffalo, KC. We take them to the YMCA, the Bighorns above Buffalo, and for 5 days, we have them, these 14-year-olds, we just did it 2 weeks ago. It's so much fun, and they learn like what kind of leader they are and how they work with other kids, with other people, and how to like think, and all of the things. We bring people up to learn about false assumptions and conflict resolution and influence, and I'm trying to think of some other ones. Oh, servant leadership, this kind of stuff. So they're so funny because they don't want to go. Like it's called Campfire, so at least we rebranded it. It's not civic leadership camp, but you know, I mean, it's camp, but they just think, oh no, so that they get put on the bus by their parent or a counselor or a teacher made them go. They just have the best time because we spend a lot of time kayaking and canoeing, but there's all these like, leadership things baked into some of that stuff. And so they don't really see it coming. Yeah.
Will you be rolling that out for adults sometime?
Yeah.
I want to go to camp
I
and learn.
I learned. So, and that program came out of our civic project. So the civic project is community leadership training. We've now graduated, we're about to start our 7th cohort. And this is why Carl Carmichael came to me, because he saw our civic project and he was saying, I think this looks somewhat like what you guys are doing as far as learning how to, you're learning all about how to identify social justice issues and make big change. So that's how he kind of explained it to me. Is that pretty much it? Kind of?
Yeah.
So the civic project is all about rural leadership, learning how to figure out what your community needs, figure out who you need to get to the table, and how do you make this thing happen. And so it's definitely learning about yourself as a leader. So you take the Myers-Briggs, and we have 2 trainers that come from Minnesota, but it is, you are there with, so it's 12 men and 12 women, and both camp and civic project, you don't have to pay to go. You have to apply, but I get it off. I get it at fundraise for all of it. And so 12 men, 12 women, emerging and existing leaders, different sectors of the community. And they go out to Eaton's Ranch, which is a guest ranch just west of town, and they're gone from Monday until Friday. They don't go home. It's really dodgy to get cell service. So it's this amazing bonding experience. So you walk out with 23 best friends. And then you inherit all of those other classes who now have you all have this shared language. You all have these shared experiences. And so really great things happen in Sheridan because we just kind of figure, well, just because nobody's done it here doesn't mean it can't be done. I mean, there's all sorts of projects that have happened because somebody from the civic project called up somebody else from the civic project and said, what do you think? Do you think we could do this? Yeah, I think we could. And they were like, this is how you frame it. And this, I mean, none of that stuff it's not just out there anyway, but to be able to have those tools and then have a bunch of other people who have those tools
makes you much more effective.
It does. And when you walk into something like maybe you're at a planning commission meeting and 2 people out of however many people are at that table are civic grads, it's like, okay, all right, we already have something in common. Like we're already halfway there. I don't have to figure that out. So it's huge. It's been a huge game changer, I think, for Sheridan. I really do. And so that civic project is, we only do it about every 3 or 4 years because it's about 120,000 to put it on. It is. And then, and we need again, a critical mass. So we need that mix of emerging and existing leaders, that mix of different sectors of the community. I got to do it in 2009, before I had this job, and it changed my life. And it's changed a lot of people's lives. I mean, it really, I learned so much about myself and what I could really do in our community. I was already involved, but oh man, it's amazing. So, so that's the leadership, and finally, the community initiatives. So this is one of the things we do. Again, it's identifying what's going on in the community and bringing people together. We're a neutral about it. You don't have to solve it, but talk about it, or talk about it to solve it, like work toward action. So in 2017, 16 or 17, we kind of saw the writing on the wall as far as that things were going to be pretty, I mean, civility was going down the drain pretty quickly. And so we brought in some people from Cambridge, Massachusetts, from Essential Partners, and they trained about 65 different members of the community. Again, really interesting cross-section of people it didn't matter. I didn't care what political party you were in, just if you were game to learn how to facilitate conversations around tough subjects. Yeah, and can we talk about this in a way that there's no way that there's no gotchas, there can be no yelling. It's so well structured. It's all about listening for understanding and not trying to, number one, you don't have the opportunity to like jump on top of someone. Like if someone is saying something, the process does not allow for, I mean, especially if it's well facilitated, but it's about listening for understanding, not changing someone's mind. And also listening, like some of the stuff that we've done, it makes you think about, well, wait, where did I get that why do I feel so strongly about that? Where did that come from? Because a lot of times, I mean, like I think about Catholicism. When you start at the cradle, you don't ask any questions. It's just baked in. I mean, it's just baked in. And so when I had a friend who wanted me to be her sponsor because she was going to become Catholic when I was in college, and she would ask me all these questions, and I'd be like, I don't know, like, because you just do, because you just are, because that's how it is. I mean, so it's been really good to have people like, well, why do I hold that opinion, or where did that come from? And so these conversations have been really good. And now we've taken it to the next level where we're doing essential photo voice, which is, if you guys know about photo voice.
These things are things that look into Essential Partners and Essential Photo Voice. And I know.
Yeah,
record those.
yeah, and you can, and on the website, we have some stuff about it, but that's like to get to the next level with photos and having conversations around bringing in a photo based on a prompt that then starts a conversation. It's very cool.
What kind of photos?
So different photos that you took on your phone. So so we just did one this winter, and it was all about the changing face of Sheridan, because we've had so many people move in, we've had a ton of growth, as a lot of Wyoming has. And so we recruited, how many people? 28 people, again, trying to be really thoughtful about people who don't look like everybody else. People who just moved here, people who were born and raised here, people who maybe moved with their spouse. I mean, so all these different perspectives of Sheridan. And then the first prompt is just bring a photo that kind of explains something about you. So you just went out with your phone and took a photo, and we printed it out, and then there's a very guided conversation around, you have 2 minutes to talk about your photo and what it means. People have 2 minutes to ask you questions that you don't answer yet. You write them down, and then you have 2 minutes to answer them. So, I mean, you go really deep, really fast. It's really great. And so that was like the first week. The next week was, and you send them the prompt in advance. So they have the week to drive around and take pictures of whatever. So what are things that are going really well in Sheridan? Next week, what are some challenges? Lots of subdivision photos in that one. What is your vision? What would be your vision for Sheridan in 5 years? And then, so again, taking pictures every week, coming back, having those conversations.
A great idea.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's really, and you guys can do this. I mean, we could train you up in 12 seconds. It's really
We're all for that.
I mean, it is really great.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's what so study circles, we've been doing study circles since before me. Study circles is, so the conversations don't, like our community conversations where we're talking about hard stuff, those were not about moving to action. But like we did stuff on we talked about public lands, we talked about affordable housing, we talked about workplace harassment. What does it feel like to, what was it? What does it feel like to belong in Sheridan? I think was what it was. Or what does it feel like to be an outsider in Sheridan is what I think it was. Those were just conversations. We were not working towards something. We were just trying to like model what this could look like. But study circles is about moving to action. So study circles is 5 weeks that move toward action. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And so the first one we did was on early childhood education. And then I started in 2010. And in 2012, we did one on poverty. And so you're thinking, oh, great, so you're going to solve poverty. What was amazing, and this is what I love about this process is that you break it down, and we'll talk about how you do it, but you break it down and then you build it back up in a way that you're like, all right, we could do this. And so the stuff that came out of our study circles on poverty, at least of the 7 initiatives, at least 3 or 4 of them are still going all in. And it's funny because what you're doing here was one of the outcomes of study circles, and they had it up and going. It was community connections. It was a combination of getting people cash, getting them cash, because all the churches were just being hit up all the time. And so this was one way that you could give to community connections, the churches could, and then they could send the people who were having a hard time, and they would not only like do one intake form, so they didn't have to go to all of these places and tell their terrible story with their kids, with their dodgy transportation, and maybe that place isn't open. I mean, it's all these things. So one intake form, and then that person would basically case manage them. Now they still had to go, but they could say, this is what you need when you go to DFS. You're going to need this paperwork and this paperwork and this paperwork. So they didn't just, and DFS isn't open on Monday, or whatever. So kind of case manage and sort of plug some of those crisis holes while also trying to work them into some sort of stability.
Identify the resources.
Yes, exactly. And then help them plug in. And so that was one of the things that came out. Another one was trying to keep people, keep kids in school and up the graduation rates. So there have been some phenomenal partnerships that starts with truancy in grade school. So how is that being done well? So we found other programs. I mean, like, so anyway, it's amazing because it works, because all of these people come. We'll talk about how we get them to come, but they come, they're part of this, they're part of the conversation, they're part of the solution, and then they're excited and they want to see it happen. So that's what I think is so magical about this. I know. Where is the basement? As someone who grew up in Illinois,
We look
And
for the
we
basement,
look
don't
for
we?
the basement.
Growing up in
Yes.
Kansas, same.
Yes. I'm driving to Casper.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I don't know.
I know, we'll see.
It's bowling league.
Yes, that's what my mom always used to say. The angels are bowling. So anyway, so I'm going to talk to you about what it takes to get here. So we did study circles on early childhood development, then poverty. Then we did creating a dementia-friendly community, and that was another thing where we had probably 6 initiatives that came out of it. And just as we started to work amongst the different committees, the senior center, which is the hub, that's what we call it, is they had an opportunity to get a huge federal grant because we had all of this basically like, look, see, we could do this. They wrote a grant and they got $125,000 at least. Oh, no, it was way more than that. It was way more than that. 850. It was a lot. It was a lot of money over 3 years, and to make dementia friendly Wyoming, to train other communities, it's amazing. But it was because we already had sort of this plan. And then the next time, the most recent one then is mental health. So that'll be obviously 2 falls ago. But the way that we decide what subject matter we want to do is, again, it's kind of like looking around and saying, what do we need? What is this community really, and what's going to resonate with people? Because if it's a really niche thing, like there are some people on my advisory board wanted to do accessibility. And that can be anything from people with disabilities to, I mean, all sorts of things. But it's pretty niche. I mean, this poverty, even dementia, like those, you have to think about that. So if you guys decide you want to do something like this, you really got to think about who can I get to the table, because you really need a lot, not a lot, but enough people that, because if you can't get it up and off the ground, then people are like, well, I love that we sat around and talked about. I mean, and not everybody who's going to come to these conversations is going to want to pick up the ball and run with it. A lot of them are, because they're invested and they helped create it. Any questions before I tell you about how?
Yeah, how do we get you and or this program down to wherever we are, Riverton, Saratoga, Cheyenne?
Oh, I would absolutely can go. I mean,
Really?
Oh, yeah, and I can also just train you guys on how to do this.
Cool.
Absolutely, for sure, yeah. And you can, and the thing is, the beautiful thing is, so it's from Everyday Democracy. That's the actual, so if you go to everydaydemocracy.org, they have some already quote unquote canned ones. So there's racism, there's bullying, and they're all around community issues. But what we did with dementia friendly, not with poverty, because we got that straight from them. With dementia friendly and this one, we just took the template and then just reorganized it for this particular, whatever the subject is, which is pretty easy. You could, like for the dementia friendly one, all we did was do a find and replace for dementia for mental health. And you still have to go clean it up. You've got to make sure that it all works. But for the most part, it's the same system. Yep. So if there's something that Everyday Democracy doesn't have, you can really tailor this to work for you based on what your issue is. Yeah. So let me tell you how this works. Okay. So I don't know if you guys had a chance to read this, or at least to look through it, but I'll tell you how we the front end work. So the front end work before you even, well, you can create this. The front end work, it's all about identifying who needs to be at the table. So you need, in this case, you obviously need people. In a perfect world, you really want people who have mental health issues, which is really, really hard. It's like trying to get people who are in poverty to come because, well, they have a couple other things going on in their lives. And the last thing they want to do, survival. And the last thing they want to do is be the spokesmodel for something going wrong, you know? So that's really hard.
How do you get over that shame?
You know, what was interesting is we weren't wildly successful. It was about trying to get to the people who are working with them and to see if they could, like, if they had a trusted person,
Bring
somebody along. Yep. So like when we were doing mental health, we didn't have a lot. I don't think we had very many people who were at least going to avow that they had mental health issues. But we had a fair amount of people who either have mental health issues in their family that they're supporting, or we had a ton of pastors, we had a lot of counselors, we had a lot of caseworkers, you know, the people who are working one-on-one with people with mental health issues, they came. So not ideal, but not bad. I mean, you're at least adjacent. And that's what's tough with some of these is, you know, who wants to come in and say, listen, I do suffer from schizophrenia. Want to ask me some questions? No, I mean, you know, and again, and I honestly, when we decided that we wanted to do mental health, I had really hoped that we had just come out of COVID And I had really hoped that all those people who said in Wyoming, in the country, but in Wyoming especially, who said, you just need to get over it. Like depression is just because you just need to get more sleep, or you just need to smile more. Or
You
just
need
put
more
on a happy
vitamin
face.
D.
Uh-huh.
What?
yes. All those things.
My unfavorite is, you just need to exercise.
Yeah, right.
That does not make me happy.
Yeah, uh-huh. And anxiety. Well, maybe you should just calm down. Why don't you just overthinking this? All those things. Well, all those people, not all, but a lot of people who probably said those things were the people that also came down with that were suffering from that during COVID. And so all of a sudden, I was really hoping that some of those people who were doubters or who were like, they either saw it in their families, because a lot of us did, or they suffered from it themselves and were trying to make their way out of it. And so we would have more, and we might have, but there are a lot of people again who said, oh, hey, I myself am currently depressed, or I'm on antidepressants. I was surprised because when I write a column every 5 weeks in the paper. Most of the time it ends up being just an Amy blog, but sometimes I actually talk about the work that we're doing. And I said how important this was because, I just said, well, like I'm on antidepressants. And I said, telling people that I'm totally fine with it. Like, and I'll explain to you why I'm on antidepressants. Why is that so hard? Why is that so hard? And I have people call me and say, I can't believe you were so brave. That was not brave. That would not feel brave. Like I would admit if it was felt brave, it was not brave.
I've been on antidepressants since I was in high school, junior
Yeah.
high, actually.
Yeah.
And it's
Last month,
it's hard.
we were listening to people from law enforcement. We asked them about, we were kind of like, how can we help, and do you have counselors? In their context, the best right now is they don't mind calling an anonymous number. So their work context, their social setting, there's such a taboo. And that's why they feel they can't talk about it. They can't go to a counselor. They're afraid who will find out about it, who will be in my reporting chain that now knows I'm going, how will this affect my promotion? All that goes through military, a lot of the agencies, CIA, FBI, all those sheriff's department, police
It
department.
could cost your job.
There's about
That's what
20% of our
Yeah.
society right there that
It's not even don't ask, don't tell. It's worse than that.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, and law enforcement was a huge part of these conversations too, which was awesome.
That's part of the.
oh, yeah. So often they're first to see the signs.
Absolutely,
But the
absolutely.
signs got
And they
bad
have
enough.
so few options, so few resources, which is a different conversation, but, anyway, what we did was we had a committee and there were probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 of us. And we identified the sort of pools of people, the audiences that we really wanted to find. And then we knew enough people that we either cold called or we started asking people who then asked people who then asked people. And we advertised it. We did a kickoff. I did dog and pony I of course went to Rotary because Rotarian, but I went to wherever I could. I got on the radio, I did it all. And because we had such success with dementia friendly and with poverty, and I could speak to that, then people are willing to be like, all right, I can give up 2 hours a week for 5 weeks because this is something that's important to me. So that's how we tried to get people. The other thing that we did is we recruited facilitators. So most of them were from my committee or on my board. So we trained them up, which doesn't take very long, but we trained them up. And we also made sure, because of mental health, we wanted to make sure that they had some resources if things were gonna go a little sideways. So we did that because that's really important. You don't want to put somebody in a place where, right, yes.
Have you worked with city council or?
Oh, we've tried.
Okay.
We recruited like nobody's business.
Yeah.
We did get the mayor to come. That was helpful. But it's hard to.
Is it fair to say you did a runaround? What'd you call that in football terms, folks?
An end around?
Oh, and run, yeah, kind of, yeah. I mean, this is, to take a small sidebar. When we do when we do community conversations, which, you know, we're trying to get people to talk about hard things. What I really want are people who have diverse opinions about these things to come to the table to talk about them. Like we talked about after Trump lost, win or lose, can we talk? Like, what do you want to hear from someone? If I'm a Trump voter and I'm sad, I'm angry that I lost, what do you want to hear from the Biden voter? As a Biden voter, what do you, like, how can we meet somewhere? And I cannot get Republicans, and I don't mean to, not all Republicans, but most Republicans, I cannot get them to come to these conversations. Which is really, so now we have been, I think, somewhat labeled as a liberal organization, even though we're supposed to be neutral. Anyway, so that's frustrating, and it's also hard to get people who haven't seen the process work, haven't seen this work, to come and want to devote 2 hours a week for silence.
Have the power,
Yeah,
but it seems like city council and commissioners and whatever,
definitely have commissioners.
you would think, you know, especially as contentious as meetings have become, that the state would want some of this training. But maybe not.
I think sometimes they are the contentious ones. Sometimes, at least a couple, at least that are in Sheridan, a couple of them definitely are. So that's how we recruited. Then we also, the facilitators, then, so there's 2 facilitators. One is generally a scribe and one is a facilitator. And then if something, so we get them trained up, and then we kind of we try to find times throughout the week that would work for someone. So maybe it's a Monday morning at 7 o'clock in the morning. And another one is on a Tuesday from noon to 2. And another one is maybe Wednesday from 5 to 7. So we're trying to like hit some sweet spots where if you're working, you could make it. If you know, you've got kids, you can make it, that kind of thing. And so we had, I'm trying to remember how many circles we had. Let's say like 8 circles. So they're going at this, so everybody's going at the same time. So each week, if you'll notice, on page 4, 5, so session 1, or 4, because it's easier. So 4, so on page 4, so session 1, so the first week, that's where, so everybody, all the facilitators, all the circles, so each group that has 2 facilitators is called a circle. Each circle is doing the same thing, having the same guided conversations around meeting each other, creating a vision, studying the problem, finding solutions, and planning for action. So if you couldn't go, like, we like to build cohesiveness each week, and it builds trust and stuff, but if it's the difference between you not going to a circle or going, you can drop in anywhere. So it's not like, I'm sorry, if you weren't here first week, you're out. Or if you haven't been to a circle at all, want to show up in the 3rd or 4th week, we'll still take you. So that, because some people either, they don't know what it is, they just couldn't make it, they want to see whether it's really going to work, they heard about it, and there's been talk. We had a ton of people join, like midstream, fine, it's fine. Because you go through the rules at the beginning anyway, this is how we conduct this, you know, you have a facilitator, so keeping people in and stuff, so that's how that works. So the first one is talking about what is your connection to this issue individually. So you go around and each person talks about what they're gonna, you know, sometimes you have a few minutes, the facilitator just kind of plays it by ear. Like, we have this much time, we don't have to ask all these questions, but we want to get to everybody and we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to talk. So when I facilitated study circles on poverty, I had like 12 people in my group, and a friend and I were facilitating, and we had this one woman, she had an opinion about everything. She would not stop talking. And so, I mean, we would just be like, thank you so much, Barbara. That's great. Now we're gonna give someone else another try or a chance. I mean, like, you had to just finally step on her and get her. Otherwise, she would just run the meeting, and that's the, and people get really passionate, or people get really like, and so you wanna make them feel comfortable and draw them out. Absolutely, absolutely. So there's a lot of just paying attention to the group dynamics.
Every church has one like Barbara.
Only one, only one. Impressive,
At least one.
at least one. Mhm.
Almost as bad is the chaser of rabbits.
Chaser of rabbits. Yeah.
And when you have a whole classroom of them.
Herd the cats.
So before we get into each one, do you guys have questions about how we get there?
What size of circles do you strive for?
We strive for 8 to 12.
Okay.
We had probably closer to 8 with mental health, with each one, but they were devoted. But more than 12, and even 12 starts to get kind of, like you really want to do a nice job of managing that and making sure that every voice is heard.
Management. The master's knowledge, is cut off.
I believe it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But and 8, I think any look, we talked about like what's the least amount before we're like, I'm sorry, you're gonna want to pick up this circle and move it to another circle. And I think we decided, depending on how engaged everybody was, we could get away with 4, but it really depended on the personalities. Like you wanted to see how it went after the first one. And but 6 to 8 is really a minimum, because you want to have a good diversity of opinion and have people be, without it just being, the same people. Yeah, yeah.
Did you provide childcare?
We did not, we offered childcare when we did our poverty study circles, because we wanted, again, we wanted people
Those
to feel,
voices
we
in
wanted, yes, access. No one, absolutely no one.
Wow,
Huh?
wow.
I know,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we advertised it everywhere. It's gonna be.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, either way, even with our kids, I would have given you a gas card. So it was. We didn't offer childcare with this one. It's hard to get parents. I mean, again. So
What you're saying is, even before the first meeting, there is a whole ton of work.
there is, this is the easiest part, honestly. The easiest part is the step in the middle. The front end and the back end are the ones where the big work happened. Absolutely, for sure. The facilitation. No problem.
So you must have some kind of fact sheet or something
We do.
for each person or candidate so that you can help with the mix you're trying to curate.
Oh, no, we do not have that.
You don't know age.
We have nope. It's whoever comes to your circle, it's who you get.
Wait
The
a
time and
minute,
date
that
you
sounds
choose,
So
that's what
different
you-
from what you were saying earlier. Did I miss something in translation?
I mean, as far as how we just, you're thinking of the civic project.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's our leadership project, where we do
Okay.
sectors and emerging and existing leaders and stuff. This is come one, come all.
Okay.
Yeah, and we don't have any way of knowing who's gonna come to what circle.
And you don't keep demographics.
So what's
We
the,
talk about them a little bit at the end, but
what's then the big work that you were gonna say up front?
so the big work is the recruitment. 100%, it's the recruitment.
Whether you're trying to curate a group or not, it's still the big.
It's still getting people to come.
You feed them?
Yes, we snack them. We snack them at night. We snack them. And
You've been
if
snacked.
it's the CDC, we feed all the time. We're all about feeding. We love the feeding.
Remember that, snack them.
Snack them. We do. We snack them like nobody's business.
Ready,
And
sir.
if it was a dinner, like if it was during a dinner time, we pizza them or whatever, for sure.
You've been
Yeah, we're all
spaghetti.
about feeding. Yeah. Yeah, it's just, it was about recruiting. It's about trying to explain why we're doing this, why you should care, what's it, how it's affecting the community, and what could, what's come out of other study circles, so that you feel like, okay, well, something good could come out of this.
So that's phone work?
it's phone
Dog and
work,
pony show?
dog and pony shows, it's getting on the radio, it's newspaper articles.
Going to churches and clubs. and
Yeah,
Council
yes,
meetings.
yes, yep, we went to the pastor meetings, yes, all of the things.
So you had a scheduled meeting on 5 to 7. You know, if 20 people came, what would you do?
That's never been a problem. traditionally. I mean, it hasn't. I think probably I would split that first night. I would say, okay, we have 2 facilitators. We're gonna split up into 2 groups. But we're gonna need to figure out a way that we can, I'm gonna need to pull in 2 more. If this is the only time that all 20 of you can make it, we're gonna make this work, but we're gonna bring in more facilitators to make that happen. So I'm gonna work with whoever comes, whatever that looks like, that's the best time.
Open season, basically.
It really is. So yeah, it could be 20 and 3. And then you dump the 3 into the 12, or whatever. You just say, well, if this, week 2, we still only have 3 people. We love you. And this experience will be better for you if you pick one of these other circles.
But you don't know who's gonna show up for the first time.
No,
Okay.
no.
Are you often surprised by who shows up or what shows up?
Yes,
Who or what?
yes, I wasn't as surprised with mental health because we did such huge outreach to the pastors just came out full force. So that was and I loved seeing law enforcement and I loved seeing other people that are working directly with people, both in, not just in crisis, but just, yeah. So that was fabulous. I would have loved to have seen even more people, family members. Like, there were some of those, but it was not as many as you think. They're probably home taking care of their person, so.
Any people with mental health issues?
If there were, they didn't necessarily self-identify. At least not in the groups that I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, there's such a wide, I mean, you go from such extremes to,
I mean, everybody in that room could have been on anxiety med. and
Yeah.
anxiety med.
It's stigma attached to it. So no one's gonna talk about it.
That is the problem.
And that is 100%, which at the end we will talk about.
The only thing where's I,
True story. True story.
yeah, you're careful when you say that out loud.
Compare this process with some folks in another state.
Oh, it's funny. There's supposed to be this sort of community of practice that Everyday Democracy is trying to get going. But I found their application to be really tedious, and so I didn't do it. So no, I haven't. But they are being done all over the country.
Interesting to see how their work compares.
I will say that Essential Photo Boy or Essential Partners, which is the organization that trained us, in how to have these tough conversations, spent a lot of quality time with those guys and with other people who are doing this work as well. And across the board, unless they have, we were just talking about this morning, unless they have I don't even know how to put it, like, if they're not working with a church, or they're not working with an organization, or they're not working with a school, like where they have like built-in audiences, they have a tough time bringing people to the table too. Because they've gotten so contentious that nobody trusts that it's not going to get ugly.
Right, so Sheridan College branding really helps your credibility.
It does. I think it helps our credibility just straight across the board.
I would.
Not just with this. I mean, I think it helps with funders. And we are a neutral convener. We are trying to bring all voices to the table. It's just that sometimes people just don't trust that. So, and I get it. I mean, there aren't a lot of examples out there right now where you feel like you could maybe say that you were a Biden voter or whatever, or that you were in fact pro-choice and not worried that you would be a pariah.
You're afraid to put
Yes.
a bumper sticker on your car because something might damage your car.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Or shoot
So,
at you.
and I will, just a very small thing, and this is a one small rabbit.
The small rabbit.
Very small rabbit. But I will share with. I will share with you that I'm just remembering that this is recorded.
Do we need to blank this out or just redirect yourself?
I will redirect myself.
Okay.
But maybe in a separate recording, I'll tell you, remind me about Cam.
If we had the ability, I'd say we could stop recording. but-
And
I
I'm
can
sure that
always
would be
go-
Fine, it's just,
Yeah, yeah.
La, la, la.
anyway, so going back to this, these kinds of conversations, they don't generally get ugly. Because everybody in that room is coming for the same purpose. They want to make a change on this issue. They might have diverse ways of going at it, but everybody wants to make real lasting change. So that makes a huge difference. When I was doing recruiting for poverty, and trying to explain to people why we were doing this, I explained to them that Sheridan is a beautiful, beautiful town with this gorgeous, not telling them anything they didn't know, but on the face, it's a beautiful town, it's a beautiful, vibrant downtown, the mountains, the walking paths, the schools. It's an amazing place to live. And it's very easy. A friend of mine calls it sort of a gated community, not because we're trying to keep people out, but because it's so easy to not see all of the people that are struggling, because there's such a service industry. It's so expensive to live there. People, they just don't see it. They don't recognize that this waitress, it's probably $2.59, can't afford childcare. There's no childcare to afford. Sure as hell cannot afford any place to live that isn't unsafe and expensive. This whole list.
Yeah, I lived in Sheridan for 2 years and I really felt it was a town of have and have nots.
Mhm.
And those have nots were not seen.
They're not seen at all. No, and I don't even feel like, and maybe this is just Pollyanna, I don't feel like it's because we've shoved them like on one end of town. It's just that there's a one place that people are struggling. There's pockets of places all over the county where people are struggling. And again, they're struggling quietly, but so when I was going to places like Rotary, and I'm a Rotarian, I love those, but most of them are 60 and 70-year-old white men, nothing against the 60 and 70-year-old white men,
Yeah.
but they do not, but Rotarians, some Rotarians would not necessarily see that there was any poverty, and B, they would think that they just need to work harder. And that they're just not
themselves up
by their bootstraps. Oh my gosh. Which is
Just
so
get over
redundant.
it.
Like you can't, like that's impossible.
It's a lot.
This is why you care about poverty in Sheridan, is because if you want economic development, then you need to have a healthy workforce. In order to have a healthy workforce, you need to have kids who are being fed every day, who have a stable home, who have parents with stable jobs,
Are safe.
and they are safe at home. All of these things need to happen in order for your child not to get a crappy education because the teacher is having to deal with all of these other kids who don't have this home life.
That sounds like a very good circle topic to start at. The economy and workforce readiness, that then out of that is going to come things like the poverty, whatever. So I'm just wondering, what group of people could you attract to talk about workforce readiness that aren't showing up to some of the other ones?
Yeah.
Business.
And I don't have an answer. I'm just,
No,
it just
no.
occurred to me and throwing it out.
Yeah, it's coming in the back door.
I'm
And
sure
that's
that's
what
why
we-
it's important to them.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we were really trying to do is, this is why you care. If you want to stop having to retrain, rehire, retrain, rehire, let's talk about what the hidden rules of poverty are. Let's talk about why you need to look at people differently. They weren't raised like you were. That doesn't make them bad. It just makes them different. It's a different culture. You need to be able to understand that. It's a whole different language.
Oh, I was about to say, and the language can be so charging. So you go to the Rotarian and say, we want to talk about affordable housing. That means something that is disinteresting or
Yes.
explained away. When you pick some other words like through the workforce readiness, we need some homes in this price or
Uh-huh.
living condition. Now I've got it connected, and it's maybe the language helps me not get turned off from it,
Right.
that I feel invited again, because I'm all about workforce readiness.
Yep, and attainable housing, like that's a
There you
term. That's what we learned about that community conversation, was we used the term
I like
affordable
that.
housing, and what we learned was that means everything to everyone. That means I just got out of college. What does that look like for me? That looks like, it was so interesting to me. Affordable is not a good term at all. Attainable or workforce ready, or like these different ways that it's semantics, but it's also, it's how you invite people in. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
One of the White Houses, when they didn't want to talk about inflation, so they talk about the banana. Because the inflation, the word inflation just sent the president or something. So they talked about the banana.
The banana.
Sounds like Reagan years.
I don't remember what president
That's
it was,
interesting.
but
Nancy, what does the banana say today?
That's good.
you know,
Good
it
team.
was a way of working, of kind of diffusing the situation so that you
Yeah.
could move
Avoiding
forward.
So
that
that you-
emotional baggage so you could
Yes.
actually get to the work.
So many of these words are so loaded.
Yes.
So loaded, absolutely. Yep,
We have a mental health problem. That's a mental health problem, isn't it?
it is.
Yeah.
It is. So session one, so people come in. Everybody has a name tag, snacks for days. And so you can see, goals for the session, the overview, this is what we're gonna be doing for the next. So we do it for 5 weeks, and then we have the action forum. So that's the 6th week. So we'll talk about that in a sec. So we talk every single time, we have the guidelines. So you can see the guidelines, we speak for ourselves and allow others to speak for themselves. We don't say, well, they, well, I know that that group is struggling. Nope, if you're not the they, you don't get to say that. And so and you've got it, people generally do that and they mean well. They mean well, they're not trying to appropriate, but they just do it automatically. Yep. So, and you can see, yep, so total ground rules. And then you just, and then we would have it set up kind of generally in a U shape or something like this. So everybody could see each other. We had markers and,
By the way, we can use that if you want to.
I'm good so far, but if you guys want to. And then we didn't use it quite then, but as we kept going on through the weeks, we would start adding stuff to that. And then
For our video people,
Oh, sorry,
we're pointing at a poster board that you can record things on.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so, so then it was all about making the connections amongst each other. Why are you here? How your background or experiences affected your thoughts and feelings about mental health. That's a great opening question, because you can go as big or as small as you want on that. And it allows people to realize, okay, this is what my buy-in is. Mhm. Yep,
What is it, 2 hours?
2 hours. Yep. So you don't wanna rush people, but you also don't want, I love Sue, but I don't, Sue talking for 20 minutes about the struggles that her entire family and extended family had. Well, very important to her and important to this, everyone else needs time too. So you just have to manage that well, because there's, you might get to you and you're like, I don't really have any experience and I don't really know why I'm here. So, oh, look, we have more time for Sue, whatever. So the facilitator just really wants to manage, and those are big questions. So a lot of times we do what we do in especially with stuff like this, that we do in community conversations, which is sit with it for a couple of minutes. Think about the story or an example. Think about general perspectives you hold. What is at the heart of the matter for you? Because especially for introverts, you're not just pulling this out right now. Like,
Or cultural
Yes.
differences.
oh, the cultural differences.
Who gets to speak?
Mhm. Yes, yep,
Their age, their gender.
yes, yeah, yep. And then we do close. Then the closing is generally, they're mostly the same, just kind of talking about what we talked about. Asking questions, does this make sense to you? Do you have any questions, how did it feel? And then, okay, and then teeing them up for the next week. So think about what it might be like for a person living with mental health issues to be in this community. What barriers do they face? So then we want them to go out.
So you're not talking about that,
till
you're
next week.
prepping them to be ready.
So I want you to think about that as you go about your daily life for the next week. Look around our community and what barriers do you see? What barriers are you hearing? What are people with mental health issues up against and their caregivers? So then off they go, and then they come back the next week. And again, you sort of recap what you did last week. You start about you talk about, okay, so this is what we want to talk about this week. This is what we're hoping, this is what our goals are. And so, what is life like here for someone with mental health issues? And this is when we'll probably start writing stuff down. We don't have to keep it, but it starts to inform the conversation. And it's also a great way of going back. Well, so you said last week that this is a situation for people with mental health issues. Because the next week is going to be, what are the challenges? So you said last week this. How does this relate? So you want to sort of start that. Plus, what you'll also find is people will want to go to solution, or they'll want to go to action quick. And so you don't want to lose that. So you'll parking lot it. So you'll have a piece of paper that is nothing but just parking lot. That's a great thing. That we're going to go ahead and take that. We're not there yet, but let's put that over here so that when we get there, we remember it.
Parking lot, meaning we're not talking about that in the parking
Correct.
lot, but parking lot we're tabling that.
We're tabling that and we will return to it when it is the appropriate
And
time.
here, it's recorded here, so
Yeah.
don't worry about it, but we
Yeah.
are tabling it.
So as to keep the rabbits
Yes.
to a minimum. Because some really great stuff happens, like you have aha moments. Okay, great. Let's keep going. So then a vision for our community. It's so interesting. So then you revert when you start reviewing current services and people are like, well, we have this. I didn't know we had this. We have this. I didn't know we had this. Or there's a ton of, I wish we had. And sometimes those get parking lotted and sometimes you're like, hold on to that. We're gonna need that for next week.
Do you parking lot the reasons this didn't work before?
What
Yes.
Well, someone's coming up with, wonder if we solve this now with this, and you put that in a parking lot. There are also those who go, I don't even know why we're here. There's no hope for or whatever, or something. You get what I'm saying?
the naysayers?
Yes,
Well, we did that 10 years ago and it didn't work.
yes.
Mhm.
'Cause
Or it won't work because.
And so,
Not
yeah,
many
so
areas.
that's interesting because what would come out of that was, like, there was one that I sat in on. And the chief of police was there, and there were probably two pastors and maybe a counselor. Pastor said, ooh, it would be, what about this? And sort of came up with this, that's not a solution, but something that could work. And the police chief said, in a really nice, well, that's a dumb idea, we've already done it. That we have tried that. We tried this version of it 5 years ago. This is what it looked like. This is what came of it. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. It couldn't happen a different way, but this was the outcome of that particular. If I could remember what that particular one was, it was really interesting.
I think that's perfect though. So what I'm getting at is, yes, so I have to be
Yes,
careful. Because I want to go to the affirmative. So if I'm not careful, I will discount the reality that the person who's naysaying brings to the room.
Mhm. Yes, as will I.
We
As will
tried
I.
this before, and we ran out of money, and I'm up there going, that'll never happen again, and they're like, I lose my, you get the idea.
Yes,
So how do we
absolutely.
recognize that's why I almost asked for, what's the parking lot for? Oh, I'm so glad we did this in 99. Let's make sure we learn from our mistakes.
Yes, yep,
And then keep going.
and keep going, because you're absolutely right. Just
Mm.
because that's the person that's saying, well, that'll never work because it didn't work that first time. Let's parking lot that and figure out what were the things that didn't happen, and do we have a different situation now, or do we have different factors, different components in this community that now, like, we'll talk about that in a second, because one of the things that was, well, we need a crisis stabilization. Like, well, I'm sure we do, and that's this much money, and you know, there's this whole list of reasons why we don't have, can't have, will not have a crisis stabilization center. Guess what? Sharon's getting crisis stabilization center because of this beautiful, like, so yes, and, or no, and, I think is how I would handle that. Or what would it look like if we partnered with? I mean, like, that's coming down the road when you're starting to work toward action. But I think you, for these first 2 and 3, especially 2, it's a vision. Okay, it's what could we do? What's possible? Even if we've already done it, let's just consider it possible, and then we can, you know, pick it apart as we go further down the road. Does that make sense? And I love the questions that say, what do you imagine people in the community who aren't in this discussion might add or share that haven't been shared yet? Well, I mean, I'm not going to speak for them, but maybe it behooves me to go find out, go ask them to either join us or say, well, I did go and talk to X and they said this. So I'm not speaking for them, I'm just reporting back what I learned based on that. But it's interesting to think about building a vision. I mean, when we did it for dementia, really interesting. Just like, again, people with mental health issues. What if the person that's walking down the street talking to themselves or yelling or with Tourette's, or which isn't a mental health issue, it's right, it's less mental
It's
health, it's more
more chemical,
neurological, right?
neuro. Can't even say the word.
But someone
That word.
who does not act like what we think a person who's out in public should act like. What if that person, you know, this would be a vision. What if that person actually, someone walked up to them or just walked by them with a smile? None of this, or knock it off, or
Why are
don't
you
go in there.
smiling at me?
Yeah, you know, I mean, this kind of stuff. And so that's so we're, you know, slowly but surely, we're going deeper. Questions, yes, and then it also sort of gets you to things you might find. So that also, look, this is all about both providing questions, but also giving them some direction. So if you want to look at that.
And I guess this changes for each.
Sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't really, if you think about it, like this is a thriving community, so it doesn't matter if it's poverty, dementia, racism. I mean, a lot of the stuff,
Opportunity, respect, order, safety,
healthcare,
right
Yeah.
up there for racism, yeah.
yep. So I think this box lives in every study circle, no matter what you're doing. This one I struggle with. I struggle facilitating this because I sometimes people have a hard time getting there. Like they just want to pick 3 and call it good, or they want to pick all of them, or well, I don't really know what this has to do with mental health and why am I picking out these words? So this you kind of have to manage. Because some people they won't get it.
Smaller groups you're talking about.
Yep. But if it's if you pick, I mean, it's like trying to pick your core values. You know, you want to pick 12 core values. You can't, you should pick like 2 or 3 core values. Same thing with what are the 3 words that matter most to you, and how do you want to push those forward when you're talking about having a vision for people with mental health issues. Like what 3 things, why do I only have 3? Why can't they have all these things? So that's hard. But you can get there. And then it's, yeah, and because then you go into, why is our vision different than what's happening today? What are because we're going to go into examples of what's happening and what's not happening. Because, oh man, when you get to study the problem, that's super interesting. So do you guys, any questions about this?
There's a lot of work going on.
There's
in
a
part
lot-
Session 2.
Yeah, a lot of work. And so you really want to be careful how you manage your time with it.
Do they have this in front of
Mhm.
them? In these papers? They know.
The discussion, the facilitator guide is a little bit more robust, but not much. It's more like, it just has some sort of hints along the side, but they obviously have all of this too. But yes, this is the participants workbook.
How many times did you have to do this to feel confident about what you're doing? Or are you still working on
I'm
it?
still working on it. Honestly, I'm still working, and it depends on the group. It depends on the dynamics in that group. You know, if you have a naysayer who's gonna fight you on every single thing, and then you have a super quiet person, and then you have someone who wants to remember the top of people. I mean, look, so you're managing that, plus you're also trying to get through this and make it feel productive for everyone. So I think it's that just, and these are deep questions that you need to build some affinity amongst each other to be able to talk about this. So all of that stuff is tiring, interesting, fun, hard. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you end up with a group who all in, but not always. No. And you know how it is, people bring their own selves and their own stuff to these things. Yep, and their own perspectives, which is what you want, because when you take this out, there are people with their perspectives who need to be met. And we need to get there.
You say we were dinner now.
I was agreeing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be pluribus unum. Throw a little Latin in for you.
Yep. All right, any questions about this session? All right, so session 3. So now we're studying the problem, okay? So what do we want? And this was kind of both fun and really disgruntling. I wrote these, the different, so we have, first what we do is we talk about, let's look back at what examples of the community vision did you see? Like, I want you to go out there, I would have sent them away, say, where's some of this stuff happening? Where's some good stuff happening? Where do we see partnerships? Where do we see really exciting things happening where people who are struggling with mental illness maybe feel welcomed, or maybe can seek help, or it's a smoother path for them? What does that look like? So that we can build on that. And then, what made you sad? Like, where are you hitting the wall? Where are those huge gaps in service? Where are those people who just are like, just suck it up, So, because all of that stuff is important. And then we get into, why are there mental health challenges here? And so these are some views. So, yeah, people, they just need to toughen up. Well, it's because we're rural and they feel isolated, lack of access, systems broken. Today's society encourages folks to claim that they're suffering from depression or anxiety. It's like an excuse for unhappiness. Everybody gets sad and anxious. Oh, no. I love her so much. And she is 83 years old, sharp as a tack. And you want to talk about bootstraps. And my dad has some serious, significant brain. I don't want to say brain damage. It's just, yes, he had a brain bleed. Yep, he had a stroke, a hemorrhagic stroke 6 years ago or so. He's doing really, really well considering, I mean, but it's changed his personality quite a bit. It's changing quite a bit still. And so, and they're 24/7, and they were inseparable before. Now they're inseparable because they kind of have to be, but she gets really, really close to her dogs. She had some deaths of some of her older dogs, but this was all of this stuff. Plus, she's a worrier. She's absolute professional worrier. I mean, she is a world-class worrier who will make something up to worry about. And so she cries a lot, and she doesn't sleep very well. And I begged her, I've been begging her for years. I've stopped begging. It does me no good. Please, please go talk to someone. So she goes to talk to someone like once a year. And amazingly, that's not helping. And they didn't help her. And then I begged her to consider antidepressants. Try it for me for 2 months. 2 months. Just take it 2 months. I don't want to take meds because it's not going to bring your dad back. It's not going to bring the dogs back. And with no, but it will allow you. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I mean, so trying to frame this, it's all the spirits. And so we still are having these conversations where I'm not saying anything now. Like, there's no point in having this conversation. Like, she said, I don't know. How do I turn off my brain? And I was like, I don't have any idea. I have no idea. You know, I've tried support groups. I've tried, no, there are just, like, she is of the mind. She just said to me the other day,
She's her worst one.
she is, and it just breaks my heart because she would feel so much better. She has no idea how awful she feels. And I mean, I've watched my friends get on antidepressants who were circling the drain, and you just don't know. When you're in the hole, you just don't know. Anyway, so she is that person. Like, this is her. Like, people just need to suck it up. Like, things are hard. And meds are not going to help you. Like, you don't need meds. Everyone's on meds. Every single person's on meds. I don't know why my son's entire family, they're all on antidepressants.
It's not going to fix the problem, but it might help you see the problem from a different
Differently.
perspective.
It is a generational thing.
His mother was that way too.
Yep, it's
She
a
wouldn't take
huge.
cholesterol medicine.
Yeah.
Like, and the cholesterol was really high. Like, what's wrong with you? I don't take meds.
No, she doesn't take meds. I'm 83 years old. I've never had to take a med. Look, but you take a vitamin every day. What's that doing for you? Like, is that actually doing anything for you? You think it does? Then why can't you take this thing?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Take a deep breath.
I just shared.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Let it out.
Yes.
So anyway, so these are some different views that people will come up against, like around mental health. And so, so having those conversations, like, what viewpoints aren't here? What are you hearing? What have you said? What have you thought? Like, being able to be open and transparent about that. Like, it has nothing to do with gun laws. People will get a gun no matter what, I mean, like, having those conversations, it's really, really interesting.
If somebody really wants a gun, they're going to get it.
Yep,
There's no law that is going to stop them.
no,
Yep. So I love this line. Think about a view you do not agree with. Why would someone agree with that view? Then try to come up with reasons to support that view.
and some people will just be like, well, there's nothing right about that. Let's try hard.
But I like that. I used to think, but now I know.
I used to think, but now I know.
I used to say, or now I can say this. Speak different.
One of my friends said she started to use it when she hears something that she finds to be racist or homophobic or something that she doesn't agree with, that she thinks is not appropriate. Instead of saying, I can't believe you just said that, or what are you thinking? She says, oh, do we still say that?
Nah.
Isn't it great? Isn't it great? They're like,
Maybe not.
oh, do we See? Anyway. speak up.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
see?
not better than saying, boy, you're really stupid for thinking. that."
Yeah.
What
Well,
were
you're a
you on?
racist. Yeah, instead of that, oh, don't say that. Use that term. Uh-huh. So these are really rich conversations, because if we're going to be making changes, we are going to need to go up against these views. No, right or wrong in your head, they're gonna be, someone else is not gonna necessarily agree with them. So how do we approach those? Where are they in conflict with each other? If our vision is this, then which views are gonna support that, and how can we sort of bring more people along?
Now, do you get people who create a vision and have a problem and have all this supporting stuff, but it's still not, it's really not right?
I mean, as far as when you get to the end,
Well, yeah, yes, or you know, do they come up with solutions that aren't really gonna work, or,
we'll get to it.
okay.
Yeah, I will answer that. So any questions about this? About where we're going with this? Okay.
You ever run over the time?
It depends on the group. Sometimes you have to, I mean, like, I am a timekeeper. I am a stickler, because if I've asked you to spend 2 hours, I am not gonna ask you to spend 2:01. You know, I feel very strongly about that.
Turn off early, that's okay.
Uh-huh, yeah, I mean,
As
if
a
it's-
wise man told me, any meeting that ends early is a good meeting.
it's a good meeting, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. So if you kind of give it, you know, been quiet, allow people to process, allow people who are a little bit more quiet to say what they need to say, or drawn them out as you've tried, and you've pretty much gotten everything you can, then you can be done. And then you just tee them up for next week. Yeah. Okay. Session 4. Oh, and by the way, and for those of you who are extroverts, sitting with the silence, which I'm sure you guys all know, is critically important, especially with this, where you're thinking to yourself, oops, we got all these questions. And you don't have to do all the questions at all. But you do need to sit with the silence for a little while, which I don't do very well, and I really am working on it. But you need to sit with it and say, do you have any questions? How do you guys feel about this? And just sit.
Remember that gap, that silence you gave us earlier, about 30 minutes ago? Thank you. One of the things I do in teaching pastors and chaplains is to teach them the power of silence. Silence, especially for extroverts, we think silence means nothing's happening.
Mhm.
We're wasting time,
Mhm.
when just the opposite is happening. Silence allows what I would call the spirit time to work inside.
Mhm. So that is something that's really important, and it is hard when you're looking at this and going, oh, we have to do this.
And one
I
thing,
mean,
if you
let
find
everybody-
that, sorry,
No,
if you're a person that's hard for that, practice it. Sit at home and turn off the radio and the TV for 8 seconds at a time. And just slowly work your way up. Practice it.
so now we're starting to find solutions. So there are different, so we sort of can some approaches. In other words, so we sort of tee them up, go ahead.
Can you explain why you do that? It's a little different from other forms of brainstorming, blah, blah, blah.
Yep. It's worked well, because I think what it does is it spurs not just conversation, but, well, sure, we want people to, I mean, it's fairly vague, help people access local mental health supports and services to meet their needs. Well, yeah, and this is how we're going to do that. So this is really more of a trigger for the next thing, like, here's a possibility, but it's not the solution. It's the, okay, this is,
Prompts.
yes, exactly. Yep. So, so going through these. And so you have people, generally you have someone read each one out loud. And then the action items, so this is what you're doing. So like say, reduce negative attitudes and raise awareness. We should have a billboard campaign. Okay, we're just gonna write that down. Action, approach one, action, billboard campaign. We're brainstorm under these, like, ooh, or I don't really think. I mean, yeah, we need to build connections, but I think we've already got that handled. Let's go to this thing. Whatever. This is when you're gonna start generating these ideas of what we can do. What could really happen? Because now we're getting lists. Now we're maybe bringing those parking lot things in, the ones that somebody had some great idea 3 weeks ago. Now, Sue, didn't you say something about blah, blah, blah? This seems like, would that fit under here? That kind of stuff. So that's where this starts coming together. Because what we're going to start doing is now we're getting to the place where we're going to start whittling down. We're going to start prioritizing. We're going to figure out, can we really do something with it? Will this really, I mean, we could come up with all the pie in the sky ideas, but we've already looked at what our challenges are. We've already looked at what we already have. What can we build on? Where can we find some partnerships and connections? What do we need to blow on a small little flame to get it going? I mean, what's already in process that we can help along? Or what are we going to create from whole cloth because enough people feel like it's important, that it will work, that it would be successful? So this is where the rubber is meeting the road, because what you're going to do in the next week is you're going to choose the 2 or 3 initiatives or ideas that you think are going to have the most traction. Because when we talk about study circles and the initiatives that come out of study circles, we tee them up by saying we need to move the needle. We need to see actual change. This is not just us saying, well, we just really want to have a crisis stabilization unit. I'm sure we do. Of course we do. What in the world does that look like? Is there even a chance that we can make that happen? What are the steps that need to be done? Like, so if we're going to do this, we're going to need to have some critical, mass to make that happen. What over the last 4 weeks, what have we learned that would help make that happen? So, like when we talked about poverty, we talked about graduation rates. We talked about internships and job shadowing. We talked about truancy. We talked about the same thing that you had, which is the community connection, a one-stop shop to get your needs met. We talked about, I'm trying to think, I think like a community garden. How can we get overages from all of these people who have, all of this game meat or all of these vegetables, and how do we get it out? A babysitting co-op. How, like these things, can we actually find partners, make this happen? And if it's something that's just so big that even though we really want to do it, we're just not going to be able to. Like, it's not achievable. It's a great idea. Maybe we'll work toward it, but it's not achievable right now. What we want is achievable. We need some wins, and we need some movement. So that's where the action ideas, where you're setting priorities, what's realistic and useful, who will work with us, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
You have somebody who steps in at this point and says, what if it fails?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. Nope. No, that's coming.
Okay.
Plenty of time.
Always there.
Yeah, because, so now we've made these lists. Maybe we've had everybody either come up and star their favorites, or as a group, collectively have decided that these 5 are the ones that we think have the best chance for success, the best underpinnings for support, blah, blah, blah. So, once again, we're going to take our people, We're gonna say, what do you know? Who do you know? What are their skills? Like, if we took everybody in this room, what are the things that are gonna be most successful for you guys? What do you guys see? How do, so you can see this, like, so public doesn't understand that teen mental health struggles and the stigma that surrounds them. Okay. The teachers, the coaches, and the parents want to support the teens in any way they can. I know all the football coaches, or I know I am on the school board and I can, whatever, or I know someone who, like, so you're building people in those groups to want to get involved because they're creating these solutions. Yeah, and you're building links, absolutely. You know, it's you know how people throw the yarn across when you know somebody or you have and you're getting people fired up about it. So they go ahead and in that moving to action, the facilitator takes the two or three strongest, like the group thinks, the 2 or 3 strongest initiatives. Then off they go. Okay, for they get a week off, basically. So all the circles, not the facilitators, but all the circles get a week off. Okay. So on that 6th week, all the facilitators come together with us, the CDC, and maybe the committee unless they're facilitators, but this group comes together and they bring their 3. What was really interesting in both dimension, well, honestly, all of them, is there's so many overlaps. There's so many overlaps, which is awesome because that means that there is a collective amount of people that really could see that happening. So now you have even more people. So, I mean, it was not hard to come up with when we did poverty. It wasn't hard to come up with 8 of them because there were clearly 8 that almost, you know, that the different circles had come up with. If there are outliers, it's not that you throw them out, but it's just like, if maybe somebody wants to take that on their own.
If it's an outlier, there's not a critical enough mass.
No,
to
who
make
at
it
least
happen.
thought of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there were some of those with mental health where you're like, well, so on that 6th week, we all get together, we decide as a group, because you know, the facilitators coming back with all of that rich conversation in their heads about, oh no, my people, I'm telling you, they really want this, and I really think we can make this happen. And somebody else says, well, you know, that looks a lot like what we talked about, and I think if we bring our people with your people, like, yeah, I think that they could see the commonality of this idea, even though we might have named them different things. And then the 7th week is the action forum. So the action forum is when you invite everybody. So everybody that's been in the circles, anybody who's been watching from afar, anybody who's interested and just wants to see what came out of this. I mean, anyone, again, food, all about the food. So we bring food. Then what we do is we pick I like to call them a spokesmodel. We pick a spokesmodel for each of the initiatives. So it would have been one of the groups, maybe the Wednesday night group felt really strongly about a mental health coalition. And I'll talk to you about what came out of our show, but like mental health, and they want to speak to that. So there's 2 representatives from the whatever. And generally we try to do that. Like each circle will talk about the initiative that, you know, and even if it's one that another circle had. So everybody gets to talk, you know, one spokesmodel from each group gets to talk about their experience and what came out of it. Well, so then what we do is we have tables, and we've done it different ways, but we basically have tables and we have like a balloon or some indication, a flag or something that says like, this is the name of the initiative. And then there's the sign-up sheet. So if this is something that you're interested in, we've already, in that 6th week, we've already found sort of champions to at least call the first meeting. Take the volunteers that have written down, who've not necessarily committed to, you know, to start a whatever, but are interested enough to want to at least go to the first meeting. So we've already got somebody who's going to call the first meeting, send the emails out to these people, invite them, and start that initiative going and seeing whether it gets some legs and goes. The CDC, we support with like, do you want snacks? We support with, like, we set them up for success, but we are not, for the most part, we are not incubating them. With poverty, we incubated a couple, but we just don't have staff. So if they need a place to meet, or they need maybe some connections or something, we can do that. But at the end of the day, it's the people who created this and who were really interested, who sat in the action forum that want to do this, will take it and run with it.
You say what incubating means to you and your group.
So for us, like, so I keep looking at Sue because that community connections, that was one of those things where we said, you know, that was a universal thing. If I am struggling, I don't want to go from place to place to place to place to place to find these services, whether or not I even know they exist. I want to go to one place. I want to tell my terrible story, and then I don't have to do it again. And I want to be able to get those resources. Well, that was something that they heard across all the circles. So there was a committee that, I mean, we're talking 12, 15 people that met for. They were just sitting around talking about it for 5 years. They spent like the first year looking at what's an easy entry point. So they do 211. They're like 211 exists, you know, that's where you call 211. And so 211 already exists. Let's start there.
You know what that is?
Yep, so let's start there. We'll get people, we'll make sure that all of the services in Sheridan County that fit, you know, this are signed up and updated with 211. That's the first thing. Okay, then what else is going on? What does this look like in other communities our size? So they looked at one in Jackson, they looked at something down in Denver, they looked at, I think maybe something in a smaller town. Like how does that look? How is it funded? How is it supported? You know, with staff or whatever. And then like by the 4th year, and again, I mean, and people came and went. There was a core group of people, but people kept coming and they kept moving it. So cool. So as far as the incubation piece of it, it was us providing a space. One of my employee was really, it was one of her, like she was really passionate about it. So she stayed on that committee. So that was sort of a little bit of incubation. Whatever we could do to support it, we just weren't actively involved. Like I was not calling the meetings. I was not doing the things to find out. No, when we were doing study circles, when we were doing, what's it called? Ruby Pain.
Bridges out of poverty.
Bridges Out of Poverty, thank you. We did 2 Bridges Out of Poverty trainings for anyone in the community. Oh, we did more than that, but the CDC did that. We hosted it, we paid for it, we did all the invitations, food, all of it. That was a hugely important thing for me. I really felt very strongly about that. And for the CDC as a community connector, I felt like that was a really good thing. But the rest of them, they did it on their own. They went out and they figured out what was out there and they did it on their own. Whether it was it was like the one where it was internships and job shadowing. That ended up sort of meeting with how do we get truancy figured out, because if they're truant, then they're not, either then school is important. How do we, anyway, they went out and found programs that were working in Bozeman, and they brought them here, and the schools got on board, and now it's a thing. It's been a thing. So that's what, so incubation for us really, it's more of a hands-on, like we'll do whatever we can to support you. We'll pull you together as needed. We'll report out to everybody who's involved. We'll report out to the community. We'll go back out to the organizations, whatever you want to support. But at the end of the day, you're taking this and running
So
with
that
it.
is incubation or it isn't?
No, that is not. Like, well, no, that's more support. We'll do it if you ask us, but we are not going to pick this up and take it. We have enough stuff that we do by ourselves. Does that make sense? And besides, it's not ours, it's the community's. So once that happens, once you've got people signed up for whatever initiatives, like when we did mental health, I think there are 5 initiatives, and I can talk about them, but 5 initiatives, people came and signed up for like 3 or 4. They were so excited and so interested. So it's wild. It's wild to see what happens, and to see people get so excited. Yeah. So, yeah, the only other thing I would add, so for mental health, for our mental health one, so we ended up with a mental health coalition, which was about a work group of individuals in the community responsible for coordinating and evaluating the progress and success of improving mental health in Sheridan County. So this was mental health care consumers, lay people wanting to impact mental health, and professionals in the community that were working with the current mental health system. That was the coalition. Then there was the mental health public awareness campaign, which is again all about trying to break down the stigma, like put a face with mental health, a local face with mental health, people telling their stories, becoming a National Alliance on Mental Illness, so NAMI affiliate, and then a mental health resource center. So kind of a one-stop shop, but it could be a website, an office building where they can visit virtually or in person, where you can have support groups, that kind of stuff. Of those, what basically happened over the course of a year, so that was in November when this came out. Over the course of a year, basically what has happened is the mental health coalition hasn't really come to fruition because the person who was leading it ended up going to a different. I mean, she loves it, but it's too busy. The mental health public awareness campaign has gone under NAMI. They've established an affiliate. NAMI has so many resources to train you to be a spokesperson or to be a person who can talk about your experiences and going out there. So having a speakers bureau, they've done a bunch of outreach as far as they've had, like, here are all the resources available. It's been great to have the synergy with that. And then the Mental Health Research Center, that's kind of become NAMI too. Like NAMI's growing, they got a grant, a big grant. So they're gonna have a statewide coordinator. They only have like 4 affiliates, I think, but they can now really dig into the ones that they have and make them more robust. And it's really going well.
National organization.
Yeah. Yeah, so they have tons of resources.
We had one there and.
Mhm.
And so, we,
We had the same Cheyenne and they go to us.
So we'll see,
But doesn't Juanita at the St. Peter's? Yeah.
She does.
She does, and I think they have an office.
They do,
Yeah.
they do,
it's for-
you're absolutely right,
Yeah.
at St. Peter's. And Dr. Asher has been incredibly helpful, psychologist in town, psychologist, I think, not psychiatrist, anyway, yeah, so.
So those are all initiatives that came out of the study circles in 2021.
That would be great to see the non.
Oh.
In our state.
Oh, it's so great, because they're also training up people to be lay counselors, or, and yes, so training them to be support group leaders, and so that you could have a teen support groups, that you could have maybe, whatever, different segmented, because we talked about that at great length. Teens are struggling so hard and they don't want to talk about it, but if they were talking about it with other teens, then maybe it's, again, stigma. No, they did, the school, but they
peer
have,
counseling at the school?
Hmm?
No peer counseling or?
they're working on that. They have sources of strength at the school. Yeah, we even had a study circle at the high school around mental health. So that's another way, which I should have led with.
Made up of the adults or the kids?
No, made up of the kids.
The teenagers.
Yep, sweet. The Downs are here. I'm gonna pass this around. So guys, and so on the website under community initiatives, which I think, wait a second, is having my website is having a moment, which is a very poor choice for it to have a moment right now. But under community initiatives, study circles is on there, and the different initiatives are on there as well. So you guys can go and see sort of what came out, and the process is there. And there's a lot of links